Welcome back, or welcome if you're new. Did you know 97% of our viewers aren't subscribed? By subscribing, you'll be the first to see every new story we release. No more searching. Plus, it really supports the channel and allows us to keep creating the content you enjoy. If you value these stories, take a moment and subscribe below. Thanks. Okay, now to today's story. You know, sometimes I lay awake at night, and it hits me like a punch to the gut. 4 years. 4 whole years I spent thinking the grass was greener on the other side of the fence. Turns out, my own yard wasn't so bad after all. Maybe even better. It's funny the things you realize when it's too late, ain't it? My marriage to Robert, well, it started like something out of a movie almost. He was full of get up and go back then. Had all these big plans, talking about his career, where he wanted to be in 5 years, 10 years. He was working at the local garage then, but he was always studying online at night, trying to get his mechanic's license and maybe even open his own shop one day. I remember those nights, sitting on the couch next to him, the glow of the laptop screen on his face as he scribbled notes. He'd tell me all about engines and transmissions, stuff that went right over my head, but I loved seeing him so focused, so driven. It made me feel like we were going somewhere, you know? Like we were a team, building a life together. We got married pretty quick, about a year after we started dating. Everything felt right. My friends, they were all getting married. Buying houses, the whole shebang. It felt like that was just the next step, the natural progression. Robert was a good man, always kind and respectful. Maybe not the most romantic fella in the world, but he had a good heart. And that's what matters, right? That's what my mama always told me. But then, things started to change. Not all at once. More like a slow leak, something you don't really notice until the tire's completely flat. It was around our 2nd anniversary, I think. My friend Sarah, she and her husband Mark, they bought this big fancy house out in the suburbs. 2 stories, a huge backyard, the works. And then my other friend Lisa, her husband Tom, he got a big promotion at his job, and they were talking about trading in their old car for a brand new SUV. Suddenly, everything Robert and I had just didn't seem like enough anymore. Our little apartment above the bakery started to feel cramped. Robert's job at the garage, well, it was still just a job at the garage. He hadn't gotten that license yet, and the talk of his own shop kinda faded away. I started looking around at my friends' lives, at their fancy vacations and their new furniture, and I couldn't help but feel left behind. Like we were stuck in neutral while everyone else was shifting into high gear. I know it sounds awful now, looking back, but at the time, it felt so real. This gnawing feeling that Robert wasn't ambitious enough, that he wasn't giving me the life I thought I deserved. I started keeping this little notebook just for myself. I called it Reasons Why I'm Not Happy. Stupid, I know. But every time I felt that pang of dissatisfaction, I'd jot something down. Like, didn't take me out for my birthday, just ordered pizza, or still driving that beat-up truck. Little things, mostly, but they added up, you know? They painted this picture in my head that Robert was lacking. I started comparing him to Mark and Tom, which wasn't fair, not at all. Mark was a lawyer, Tom was in finance. They were always going to have more money than Robert. But I couldn't help it. It was like this little voice in my head whispering all the time, "He's not good enough, Alyssa. You deserve more." Looking back, I see how unfair I was being. Robert was working hard, trying to make ends meet. He never complained, never said a bad word about anyone. He was just content. And that's what drove me crazy, I think. His contentment. I mistook it for a lack of drive, a lack of ambition. I thought he was just okay with mediocrity, and I couldn't stand it. I wanted more. I thought I deserved more, and I blamed him for not giving it to me. The little things in my notebook started turning into big things in our house. The silence between us got thicker, heavier. We used to talk about everything, even the silly stuff, but now it felt like every conversation was just waiting to turn into an argument. I'd bring up Sarah's new kitchen with its fancy granite countertops, and Robert would just shrug and say, "Looks nice, honey." But in my head, I'd be screaming, why can't we have nice things like that? I know, it wasn't fair to him. He was never one for material possessions. He always said, as long as we got each other and a roof over our heads, that's all that matters. And part of me knew he was right. But that other part, the one that was constantly looking over the fence at everyone else's perfect lives, it just wouldn't shut up. There was this one time, it was my birthday. I'd been hinting for weeks about this necklace I saw at the jewelry store downtown. It wasn't even that expensive, maybe $100. But Robert, he came home with a box of my favorite chocolates and a card. And while I appreciated the thought, that little voice in my head piped up again. Lisa's husband took her to a fancy restaurant for her birthday, and he bought her a diamond bracelet. I tried to smile and act happy for Robert, but inside, I was just disappointed. That night, I added to my list. Didn't get me the necklace I wanted for my birthday. Just got candy. It sounds so petty now, writing it down like this. But at the time, it felt like proof that he just didn't care enough, that he wasn't trying hard enough. Our disagreements got more frequent, more heated. I'd snap at him over little things. The way he left his socks on the floor, the way he chewed his food. It wasn't really about the socks or the chewing, though. It was about this underlying resentment I had, this feeling that he was holding me back from the life I envisioned for myself. I remember one evening, we were watching TV, and an ad came on for a new car, a shiny sports car. Mark had just bought one, and he was always posting pictures of it online. I sighed, loud enough for Robert to hear. He looked over at me, a tired look on his face. "What's wrong?" he asked. "Nothing," I said, but my voice was tight. "It's just, everyone else seems to be moving forward, you know? Buying nice things, going on nice trips, and here we are, still driving your old pickup truck." He put down the remote and turned to face me. "Alyssa," he said, his voice calm but firm, "we're doing okay. We got a good life here." "Good?" I scoffed. "Is that all you want, Robert? Just good? Don't you want more? Don't you want to be proud of what you've accomplished?" That's when it happened. That's when I said it. The words just tumbled out of my mouth before I could even think about them. "You know, Robert," I said, my voice shaking, "you're not a bad guy. You're just not a man I'm proud of." The look on his face, I'll never forget it. It was like I'd slapped him. He just stared at me for a long moment, his eyes wide with hurt. Then he slowly stood up, walked into the bedroom and started packing a bag. "Where are you going?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He didn't even look at me. "I don't know, Alyssa," he said, his voice flat, "but I can't stay here and listen to you talk to me like that." And just like that, he was gone. He walked out the door, and I stood there in the living room, the silence deafening. Part of me felt a strange sense of satisfaction, like I'd finally said what needed to be said. But another part of me, a much smaller part at that moment, felt a cold knot of fear tighten in my stomach. What had I just done? The first few days after Robert left felt weird, empty. Like a piece of furniture was missing from the living room, and even though you didn't really like that piece of furniture all that much, you still noticed it wasn't there anymore. I tried to tell myself I was better off. I reread my notebook, all those reasons why I'm not happy. And for a little while, it worked. I'd think, yeah, he never really listened to me. He never took me anywhere nice. I even called Sarah and Lisa, told them what happened. They were sympathetic mostly. Sarah said, "You go, girl. You deserve someone who appreciates you." Lisa was a little more cautious. She said, "Are you sure, Alyssa? Robert always seemed like a good guy." But I brushed it off. They didn't understand. They had their perfect lives, their perfect husbands. But then the silence started to get to me. The apartment felt so big all of a sudden. I missed the sound of Robert snoring in the next room, even though I used to complain about it. I missed him leaving his dirty socks on the floor because it meant he was there. I even missed him asking me the same questions about my day, every single day. I started thinking back to the good times. Our first date at the diner, how nervous we both were. The time we went camping and it rained the whole weekend, but we just laughed and huddled together in the tent. The way he'd always make me coffee in the morning, just the way I liked it. These little memories, they started popping up in my head, fighting against the reasons in my notebook. One night, I was looking through some old photos. There was one of Robert and me at our wedding. We were both smiling so big you could see all our teeth. He looked so happy, so full of hope. And I looked happy too, genuinely happy. What had changed since then? Had Robert changed that much? Or had I? I started thinking about what I'd said to him. "You're not a man I'm proud of." Those words echoed in my head, sharp and cruel. Had I really meant that? Robert wasn't a CEO or a doctor, but he was a good, honest man. He worked hard. He never hurt anyone, and he always treated me with respect, at least until the end. What was it about him that I wasn't proud of? Was it really about his job or his truck? Or was it about something else? Something inside me? Maybe I was so busy looking at what my friends had that I forgot to appreciate what I had. Maybe I was so focused on Robert not being Mark or Tom that I didn't see him for who he really was. And maybe, just maybe, my expectations were way out of whack. I wanted the big house, the fancy car, the exciting vacations. But did I really need those things to be happy? Or did I just think I did because everyone else seemed to have them? The loneliness started to sink in. I'd come home from work to an empty apartment. No one to ask about my day, no one to share dinner with, just me and the silence. I started eating a lot of takeout, watching too much TV. I felt this big, empty hole inside me, and no amount of pizza or reality shows could fill it. I even started missing his little quirks, the things that used to annoy me. The way he'd hum off key while he was working on something. The way he'd always leave the toothpaste cap off. It was like those little imperfections were part of him. And now that they were gone, a part of me was gone too. I started to wonder if I'd made a huge mistake. Had I thrown away something good? Something real? Just because it didn't look as shiny as everyone else's? The thought scared me. It scared me more than anything else. Because if I had, could I ever get it back? Could I ever fix what I'd broken? The weight of that possibility started to press down on me, heavy and suffocating. I didn't know what to do. I just knew that the picture in my head of the greener grass on the other side was starting to look a lot like a desert. Weeks turned into months. Robert didn't come back. I didn't reach out either, not at first. Pride's a funny thing, ain't it? It can make you do some real dumb stuff. I kept thinking he'd realize I was right, that he needed to step up to become the man I wanted him to be. But the phone stayed silent. The apartment stayed empty. Then one day, I ran into Carol. Carol and I go way back. We were in high school together. I hadn't seen her in ages. We met at the grocery store of all places, standing in the checkout line. She looked good, happy. She was telling me about her kids, her husband, their little farm outside of town, and I found myself feeling envious, yeah, but also something else. Something like shame. She asked me how I was doing, and I just mumbled something about being busy at work. But Carol, she always could see right through me. She gave me this look, this knowing look, and said, "Alyssa, you don't seem so good. What's going on?" So I told her. I spilled the whole story about Robert, about my expectations, about him leaving. I even told her about my stupid notebook. And Carol, she just listened. She didn't judge me, didn't tell me I was wrong. She just nodded and asked questions. When I was done, she said something that really stuck with me. She said, "Alyssa, are you sure you were looking for a better man? Or were you just looking for a different life?" That hit me hard. I thought about it for days. Was I really unhappy with Robert, the person? Or was I unhappy with our life, the things we didn't have? And if it was the life I was unhappy with, was that Robert's fault? Or was it mine for expecting him to be someone he wasn't? Carol also told me about her own struggles. Her husband wasn't some high-powered executive. He was a carpenter, worked hard with his hands. They didn't have a fancy house or expensive cars, But she said they were happy. They had each other, they had their kids, they had a life they built together. And she said that was enough for her. Talking to Carol was like looking in a mirror. I started to see how caught up I'd gotten in the comparison game. I was so busy looking at everyone else's highlight reel on social media that I forgot to appreciate my own life, the real, messy, imperfect life I had with Robert. I realized that Robert's contentment wasn't a lack of ambition. It was just a different kind of ambition. He wanted a simple life, a happy life, a life where he could come home at the end of the day and relax. And there was nothing wrong with that. The problem was, it wasn't the life I wanted. But instead of talking to him about it, instead of trying to find a compromise, I just criticized him for not being someone else. I started thinking about all the times Robert had supported me. When my grandma was sick, he was there for me, every step of the way. When I lost my job, he worked extra hours to make sure we were okay. He might not have bought me fancy jewelry, but he always showed up when it mattered. He was a good partner, a good man. And I'd thrown him away because he didn't fit into some made-up picture of what my life should look like. The reality of my choice started to sink in. Divorce papers came in the mail. It was official. Robert and I were no longer married, and the freedom I thought I wanted, it felt more like loneliness. The big house and fancy car I'd dreamed of, they didn't magically appear. I was still in the same apartment, still driving my same old car. The only thing that had changed was that Robert wasn't there anymore. I started to understand what Carol meant about looking for a different life. I wasn't really unhappy with Robert. I was unhappy with myself. I was unhappy with my own expectations, my own insecurities. And I'd projected all of that onto him. I picked up my stupid notebook, the one with all the reasons why I'm not happy. I flipped through the pages, reading all the petty complaints, and I felt a wave of shame wash over me. This wasn't a list of reasons to leave Robert. It was a list of my own shortcomings, my own unrealistic desires. I closed the notebook and threw it in the trash. It was time to stop looking at everyone else and start looking at myself. It was time to figure out what I really wanted, not what I thought I was supposed to want. And maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late to fix the biggest mistake I'd ever made. After talking to Carol, something shifted inside me. It wasn't like a switch flipped, more like a slow turning of the tide. I started thinking about Robert, not as the man who didn't measure up to my friends' husbands, but as the man I fell in love with. The kind, decent, hardworking man who always had my back. I knew I had to try to fix things, even if it was a long shot. I found Robert's number and stared at it for a long time, before I finally worked up the nerve to call. My hands were shaking so bad I almost dropped the phone. He answered on the third ring. His voice sounded tired but still familiar. Just hearing it gave me a little jolt of hope. "Robert, it's me," I said, my voice a little shaky. There was a long pause on the other end. "Alyssa," he finally said. His voice was flat, guarded. I wanted to say I'm sorry," I blurted out. "I was wrong, so wrong, about everything." Another long silence. I could hear him breathing on the other end. "I don't know what to say, Alyssa," he said finally. "I know," I said. "I don't expect you to forgive me, not right away. But I had to tell you. I was so focused on what I thought we were missing that I didn't see what we had. And what we had was good, Robert. It was really good. And I messed it all up." We talked for a while longer. It wasn't easy. There were a lot of hurt feelings, a lot of things that needed to be said. He told me he'd been lonely too. He missed me. He missed our life together, even with the arguments. I asked him if he'd be willing to talk in person. He hesitated for a moment, then said, "Okay." We agreed to meet for coffee later that week. Those few days felt like an eternity. I was so nervous. What if he'd moved on? What if he didn't want anything to do with me? I kept replaying our phone, conversation in my head, trying to read between the lines. When I finally saw him at the coffee shop, my heart skipped a beat. He looked a little thinner, maybe a little sadder, but it was still Robert. The same kind eyes, the same gentle smile. We talked for hours that day. I told him everything I'd realized about the comparisons, about my own insecurities, about how I'd finally understood that happiness wasn't about fancy things or keeping up with the Joneses. It was about connection, about love, about support. And I'd thrown that away for something that wasn't even real. Robert listened patiently. He asked questions. He told me how much my words had hurt him, how they'd made him feel like he wasn't good enough, and he had every right to feel that way. I didn't expect him to just forgive me and take me back. I knew I had a lot to prove. But I told him I was willing to do whatever it took. I wanted to rebuild our relationship, this time with the right priorities. This time, I wanted to appreciate him for who he was, not for who I wanted him to be. He didn't give me a definite answer that day. He said he needed time to think, and I understood. I'd put him through a lot. But as I left the coffee shop, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, it wasn't too late. Maybe we could find our way back to each other. Maybe I could learn to appreciate my own yard, the one I'd almost abandoned for a patch of fake, over-fertilized grass on the other side of the fence. It's been a while now. We're taking things slow. We're talking more, really talking, about our feelings, our expectations. It's not easy. There are still bumps in the road, but we're working on it. And you know what? I think we might just make it. Because I finally understand what really matters. It's not about the size of your house or the make of your car. It's about the person sitting next to you on the couch, the one who knows all your flaws and still loves you anyway. That's the kind of man I want to be proud of. And you know what? I already am. So, where are we now? Well, it ain't a fairy tale ending with a big white house and a sports car in the driveway, but it's real. It's us, Robert and me. We're still in the same little apartment above the bakery. His pickup truck is still chugging along, but something feels different. Something is different. It's me. I learned a hard lesson, the kind that sticks with you. It's like burning your hand on a hot stove. You don't forget it. I finally understand that those perfect lives you see on Facebook, they ain't always so perfect up close. Everyone's got their struggles, their worries, and comparing your insides to someone else's outsides is just a recipe for feeling miserable. Robert and I, we talk about things now, real things. I told him about my notebook, how silly and unfair it was. He was hurt that I ever felt that way, but he appreciated my honesty. He even admitted that he could have been better at communicating too. We're both trying harder. We started doing little things together again, things we used to enjoy. We go for walks in the park, we have dinner on the balcony, we even went camping again, and yes, it rained, but we just laughed. It's not about the grand gestures or the expensive gifts. It's about the small moments, the everyday connections. That's what builds a real relationship, a strong one. I look at Robert now, and I don't see a man who's not ambitious enough. I see a man who's content with what he has, who works hard, and who loves me for who I am, flaws and all. And you know what? That's more than enough for me. More than I ever thought I needed. I think about my friends, Sarah and Lisa. They still have their big houses and fancy cars. And I'm happy for them. But I don't look at their lives with that same pang of envy anymore. I realize that their happiness isn't necessarily my happiness. We all have different paths, different values. And what works for one person might not work for another. For you fellas watching this, especially the ones who've seen a few decades go by, you probably know this already. But sometimes it takes a while for us women to figure things out. We get caught up in the expectations, the pressures. We think we need this or that to be happy. But at the end of the day, what really matters is having someone by your side who loves you, respects you, and makes you laugh. Someone you can count on no matter what. That's the real treasure, not the stuff. My marriage almost ended because I lost sight of that. I was so busy chasing after some ideal that didn't even exist that I almost threw away something truly good. It was a wake-up call, that's for sure. And I'm grateful for it, even though it was painful. So yeah, that's my story. It's not a perfect one. I made mistakes, big ones. I hurt Robert and I hurt myself. But I learned from it. And hopefully, maybe, someone else can learn from it too. Don't get so caught up in the noise and the hype that you forget to appreciate what you have right in front of you. Sometimes the best things in life ain't the shiniest or the most expensive. They're the real connections, the genuine love, the quiet moments of happiness with the person you choose to share your life with. And trust me, fellas, that's something worth holding on to. Even if he does leave his socks on the floor sometimes, it ain't the end of the world, is it?